Busy day. Thanks for waiting for me. Deebo Samuel has requested a trade. This is obviously the second video that I have made about this. So subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and check out the first one if you want to see the more immediate reaction. I've also been doing a lot of writing for The Athletic, and we just wrapped up an hour-long show with subscribers on The Athletic. Had several hundred of you in there answering questions. That was an audio show. This is obviously a video show, so a little bit different. But we can attack this Deebo Samuel issue from so many different angles. At the end of the day, in this show, I'll probably end up answering some questions and probably end up talking about it from all different angles, because the way I see this, only the holistic approach is right. We had a caller named Anthony on the show on The Athletic right now, the audio dial-in, who had a great comment, and he said that he sees multiple forces at play, from the fact that Tory Dandy, who's Deebo Samuel's agent, also represents A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, to the fact that Deebo Samuel has really waffled on some positions, probably thanks to Tory Dandy, his agent. As an example, Deebo Samuel is still doing this right here. He's still selling wide back t-shirts on his official merchandise website, yet word is coming out that he's unhappy about his usage, even though he's the one really, making money off of his usage. And he seems so proud of his usage. When we talked to him not that long ago, Deebo Samuel himself coined the term wide back. And then you talk about the fact that Deebo Samuel and his friend endorsed a message that seemed to demand $25 million per year just 11 days ago. And now all of a sudden it's not about the money. So there's so much weird stuff going on. You combine that with the fact that it's just a red hot wide receiver market right now. And you combine that with the fact that the 49ers tend to negotiate aggressively early on, and that means aggressively low. We saw it with George Kittle. They called the initial offer to George Kittle the Valentine's Day Massacre. That was the exact terminology used by Jack Becta, who was George Kittle's agent. Well, I think it's all culminated and it's all conspired into the situation we have now, where Deebo, it had been a ticking time bomb kind of situation. He was upset, and now he's requested the trade. And we've reached a territory that the Fred Warner and the George Kittle negotiations did not reach. That does not mean that we cannot go back from it. It just means that this is where we are right now, with neither side talking and Deebo Samuel having requested a trade, but he's still part of the 49ers and he's still under contract for the 2022 season. So thanks for joining the show. This one is about the impact of Trey Lance on all of this, because this is the offseason of Trey Lance. There's no way around it. Trey Lance is entering his second year in the NFL. He's the presumptive starter for the 49ers in 2022. They're likely going to ship Jimmy Garoppolo out as soon as he's healthy this offseason. And if the 49ers do follow the plan of Trey Lance taking over, well, you've already heard Kyle Shanahan talk about it. That means that this offseason is monumentally important to a raw prospect / raw young NFL player like Trey Lance, for him to be ready for the big lights of the NFL. The 49ers will have 9 OTA practices, and those begin on May 23rd. And then they'll have the mandatory mini camp in June. And then it'll be off until training camp. And Kyle Shanahan has time and time again emphasized the importance of working as efficiently as possible so that Trey makes as much progress as possible during those 9 OTA practices and everything else happening this offseason. Well, what does that mean for the Deebo Samuel perspective? Well, Deebo was instrumental to the 49ers offense last year. We can talk about that forever. He was a key at running back down the stretch, because the 49ers, the way that Shanahan has built this, absolutely need a plus running back. And he was one of the NFL's most efficient wide receivers throughout the entire season. In fact, if you look at the yards per route run, and I know I've talked about this a lot, Deebo Samuel ranked behind only Cooper Kupp in the 2021 season. So he was awesome. There's no way around it. In fact, Deebo Samuel, counting the playoffs, became the first player ever to rack up 1,500 receiving yards and 500 rushing yards. So it was a special season. It was a historic season. And that's all context for how badly the 49ers would like Deebo Samuel to be part of the training fold with Trey Lance. Because if Trey Lance is going to make as much progress as is possible this offseason, you would think that a historically efficient offensive player in terms of both receiving and rushing the football would need to be in the fold. And that adds to the sense of urgency here, I think, for the 49ers to get something done to move past this current impasse. And it also will increase the potential trade price for Deebo Samuel, because you look at this and you see some of the reports that came out immediately after the trade request went public today, that the 49ers would have to be absolutely blown away by an offer to let Deebo Samuel go somewhere. And that makes so much sense because, again, they were over 4 times as efficient when Deebo Samuel was on the field versus when he was off of it last year. So it would take something monumental, an offer so big that the 49ers can say, oh, yeah, we're fine with the fact that we're giving up a player that made us 4 times as efficient last year. And in all likelihood, because of how valuable Deebo Samuel was to the 49ers, they're probably not going to get that kind of offer in return. I mean, what's the best they're going to get? Something from the Jets, who have the number 4 pick, who have the number 10 pick. We did that today. Right now, the Deebo Samuel trade simulation, 5 different offers for the 49ers to consider. I'll put it right here in the chat section. Matt Barrows and I at The Athletic, we played GM for the 49ers, and then other beat writers played GM for the other teams. They offered us picks, and everybody tried to lowball us. There was a team, I forgot who it was, that didn't even put a first-round pick as part of their offer. And the 49ers would be out of their minds to let Deebo Samuel, a player who's coming off this historic season, who's so important to their mentality, to their offense, to their efficiency, to everything, they'd be out of their minds to let him go for a package that didn't include a first-round pick. So the way that we approached those trade offers, we said, wait, listen, if you're the Jets and you're not offering a first-round pick, you better toss in either number 4 or number 10. Then we might talk, but even then we probably still won't. And I can guarantee you that's what the 49ers are thinking right now. All right, so the mysterious Deebo Samuel contradictions. Are they agent-driven? Again, I mentioned that Tory Dandy, who's Deebo Samuel's representation here, also is the representation for A.J. Brown, who, by the way, scrubbed his Instagram of Titans references, and DK Metcalf. I believe DK Metcalf still says that he plays for the Seahawks online, but I can't be sure. Anyway, some suspicious coincidences, right? But the timing of all this and the tactics of all this are just so interesting to me, because when I first found out that the same agent was going to be representing the 3 young 2019 drafted wideouts who are all trying to reset the market, at least for their draft class this offseason, I immediately said, how the hell is this supposed to work? How do we prevent this from getting into a really ugly game of chicken? Because John Lynch, when talking to him at the NFL Combine, when I first found this out back in late February, early March, he also seemed a little concerned by it. He also said, well, we'd love to sign Deebo before A.J. Brown, and we'd love to sign Deebo before DK Metcalf, but I'm not sure if that's going to be possible, because I don't know if Deebo wants to sign before those guys. And why would he want to sign before those guys? Because if every contract is going to subsequently one-up the one before it, then you're going to want to go last. The early bird here does not get the biggest worm. So now, I mean, I definitely think that fuels some of the weirdness of this situation, because you have 3 wide receivers waiting for deals, all represented by the same agent. And speaking of the agent, well, we have the contradictions. And I have to wonder if these are coming from Tory Dandy or if they're coming from people in Deebo's ear. But here's one of the contradictions. Deebo sells wide back T-shirts, but is upset about his usage, or supposedly upset about his usage. There's the wide back T-shirt. Somebody tweeted this out. Deebo Samuel wide back T-shirt. And Deebo Samuel coined the term wide back toward the end of last season to describe what he does, wide receiver and running back. And even at the height of the running back usage, Deebo Samuel lined up in the backfield only like 22% of the time. So it wasn't anything close to a 50-50 split. So all of a sudden, we've seen a narrative change from Deebo Samuel. And then there's been another shift. Deebo Samuel has signaled that it's about $25 million per year just 11 days ago on Instagram. But then these reports that came out today say that he or his camp is maintaining that it's not about the money. Again, so which is it? Wide back or usage? Money or usage? 2 separate things. And I think that there is a gulf in between both of those things. And I think the gulf means that somebody is planting some ideas in Deebo Samuel's head. And considering the fact that Tory Dandy is representing 3 wide receivers at the same time, I think it all makes sense. From an agent's perspective, you'd rather have Deebo Samuel talk as if he's a pure wide receiver. You'd rather talk about career longevity. right? And I get it. A lot of times these ideas will overlap. So you could talk about usage in the same breath as you talk about money, because if Deebo Samuel plays too much running back and gets hit too many times by 300-pounders instead of dishing contact out against defensive backs, maybe his career will be shorter and therefore he'll make less money. So it could be a usage argument that's also tied to a money argument. I understand the gray area, but it's still funny to me that the messaging has changed so drastically and then it's just gone over a cliff now, right? With Deebo Samuel requesting a trade from the 49ers. And that was, about a week ago, according to some reports. So 49ers have kept it close to the vest. NFL draft is coming up. Is this a situation where the 49ers do make a trade during the draft, get Deebo Samuel's replacement, sort of like a DeForest Buckner, Javon Kinlaw deal, or do they move forward, play hardball, realize that they actually have the leverage here? Deebo Samuel's under contract for 2022 and force him to blink first. I think at the end of the day, if I had to predict something, I think that in a rational situation, the 49ers will want to pay Deebo Samuel, right? And I think they do. I think they've made all that messaging clear from what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have said directly to some of the signals that we've seen coming out of the building more recently. And we also know on the other side of the table, the negotiating table, that Deebo Samuel wants to get paid. His own buddy messaged that he wants $25 million per year. I don't know what shape, size, or form that might come in terms of guaranteed money and guarantees and everything that comprises the APY of a contract. But both sides want something that I think can be recognized at the middle of the table. Right now, they're far apart. Right now, they're not even talking. But there probably has been a little bit of a personal rift, at least a little bit of a personal rift, to not talk. But if you realize that both sides want essentially what Fred Warner wanted from the 49ers and what George Kittle wanted from the 49ers, you can project this into July. And assuming that we have a rational framework for things progressing, you could see cooler heads prevail. At the moment, I don't think that rationality is winning out, but that's just the moment. And this situation is fluid. So we'll see if these two sides come back to the table. And I'll see if you're here with good questions. All right, questions right now. I've been talking a lot over the last couple hours. Subscribe to the channel. Happy that all you are here. This is all good, juicy 49ers drama. I'm sure that most of you secretly enjoy this as much as you might hate it, as much as you might be annoyed. But please do send me some of your questions. 49ers girl hates it here. But you're still here, so it's good. Have I heard anything about Deebo just not wanting to be so far from his family in South Carolina? I have not, but he did have a son this past offseason, baby boy. So he had his first son. I don't know if that changes the equation. Can't rule anything out because there is a gulf right now, right, in our perception of things. There is that disconnect. It's like, why is Deebo Samuel not talking to the 49ers even though they want to offer him a contract? And even though he was sitting in Kyle Shanahan's office almost every day just a few months ago. What has caused where we are right now? Why has a supposed simple start to a negotiation turned sour? There must be something that was taken personally here. Will that be permanent? I don't know. Or there could be family, personal reasons involved. I don't know. It's the big, asterisk and qualifier that comes with saying, I don't know. It could be a whole lot of things, but it's better than saying something and it not being rooted in fact. 49ers go after a top wide receiver in the draft now. Well, you can only go after a top wide receiver in the draft if you have a top pick in the draft. And the 49ers don't pick until number 61. Now, you may have a top pick in the draft if you trade Deebo Samuel, but we don't want to speak too soon. So we'll see what happens in that situation. Does 3 years, $75 million guaranteed make sense? That would be an interesting compromise. I mean, it might not make as much sense from a cap perspective. That's why I've been talking about a 5-year deal, because 49ers are up against the cap and they want to stretch this out, the hits, as much as possible. So it's like an accordion. You could stretch them out further if it's a 5-year deal than a 3-year deal. But if Deebo Samuel doesn't want to be under contract for as long, which, I don't know why he wouldn't want to be, then you do something a little bit shorter. I don't know if the guaranteed money is, what really does it. He did seem to imply that 25 million would satisfy him, but maybe that's changed. Maybe that's fluid depending on amounts of guaranteed money. Maybe Tory Dandy's in his ear about that. We just don't know enough. And I think that's one of the great frustrations of this whole situation is that there are blanks. And we can try to fill in the blanks with speculation, but we have to make sure that we really verify and ascertain and say that it's speculation, announce that it's speculation before we get there, because we just don't know. Otherwise, we can go way off the rails with this. Remember Michael Irvin's Deebo chant during the playoffs? Oh, I do remember that. That was on TV, right? I wonder how much contact Irvin and Deebo have. If Deebo doesn't play for the 49ers this year or any subsequent year, they'll make it work. They'll have no choice. Yes, that's true, but make it work to what degree? Every team is going to suit up for 17 games next year. Every team is going to try their best to make the playoffs, but the teams that actually make the playoffs and the team that ends up standing, holding the Lombardi trophy up at the end of the day, is one of the teams that's able to assemble the best collection of talent possible and make that talent into a cohesive football team. And Deebo Samuel was one of the reasons the 49ers were an effective and cohesive football team. And he might have been one of the biggest reasons the 49ers were a very good and cohesive football team in 2021. I mean, what's funny to me is that's so often in these situations where somebody's requesting a trade, that's accompanied by that player being a little bit of a problem in the locker room. Deebo Samuel has been the opposite of a problem in the 49ers locker room. He's been the opposite of somebody who doesn't get along with the coaching staff. He's literally sitting in Kyle Shanahan's office on an everyday basis, shooting the shit with the head coach. He's literally walking out next to the boombox with Trent Williams, leading the 49ers out, not just with his play, but also with his mojo. So Deebo Samuel has been an ultimate locker room type of player for the 49ers. He's been the heartbeat of the football team. And the statistics, as far as his actual on-field production, have been historic. And the 49ers have obviously relied on them. They've relied on his running back presence and also on the fact that he's been a top 2 wide receiver in terms of efficiency to churn on that side of the ball. So if Deebo doesn't play for the 49ers, they're losing a whole hell of a lot. Will they make it work? Sure, they'll play 17 games. They'll go to the playoffs. But will their offense be as efficient? It's really hard to say that they will be as efficient given how important Deebo Samuel was to them last year. And that brings back the point of this video. This is the offseason of Trey Lance. And that makes retaining Deebo Samuel all the more important. Because you had this setup with Deebo Samuel last year and the 49ers surged the playoffs. Remember the play that turned it all around for them in Chicago, week 9. Deebo Samuel took off with a short little screen pass from Jimmy Garoppolo and bolted about 90 yards downfield. Just like that, snap of a finger, season started going well for the 49ers. So there were so many moments that Deebo delivered in last year where the 49ers absolutely needed him. That was as a receiver on a screen pass. But then you go to the running back position, and he converted that third down against the Green Bay Packers, moved the chains. 49ers ended up kicking the field goal in the snow with Robbie Gould. He was indispensable to the 49ers, and he's going to be even more indispensable, I think, with Trey Lance in there if you're intending to compete this season. If you don't want this to be some kind of weird in-between building season with Trey Lance in there for the first time, I think that you need the most important versatile offensive weapon, which is why the 49ers are going to hold on to Deebo Samuel unless they get a king's ransom. And if they get that king's ransom, well, then maybe with that, you could actually net improve your team through the draft, right? And that's why the draft is an interesting inflection point. It's 8 days away. And if the 49ers still have Deebo Samuel on the roster by the end of the first round, well, there's no way that you're getting commensurate value for Deebo Samuel's impact anymore, right? Because the first round has passed. And at that point, I think it would be time to enter a standoff with Deebo Samuel, which I think the 49ers are willing to enter. So I'm going to watch this over the course of the next 8 days. That's for sure, especially day 1 of the draft. No trade happens by then. I think the 49ers are digging in. And yes, they do have the contractual leverage here with Samuel under contract through 2022. All right, questions. You guys are arguing about Trey Lance. You guys aren't asking questions. You guys always just argue in the comments section. We need real questions. Come on, guys. Deebo has no leverage. He's got a little bit of leverage, but the leverage generally, the seesaw of leverage lies on the side of the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo Samuel has leverage in that the offense was 4 times more efficient with him on the field than it was off of it last year. He has leverage because of the fact that Trey Lance is breaking in as a new quarterback and he's a major investment for the 49ers. He has leverage in the fact that the 49ers want him to be a part of this because it optimizes the experience for everyone else. That's Deebo Samuel's leverage. The 49ers have stronger leverage because they own his contractual rights through 2022, and they can apply the franchise tag beyond that. So the contractual leverage is obviously stronger than some of the X's and O's leverage and some of the locker room leverage that Deebo Samuel might have. But to act like one side has 100% of the leverage and the other side has 0 isn't true. There's leverage here from both sides. And what's interesting is that the most recent CBA has solidified the 49ers leverage. Deebo Samuel cannot hold out a training camp without losing an accrued year. The clock wouldn't start ticking on his rookie contract if he holds out a training camp. And his goal, obviously, is to get to unrestricted free agency so he could just have an open market for his services. That will happen if the 49ers don't tag him after 2022, but only if 22 counts as an accrued year. According to the new CBA, if Samuel holds out a training camp, 2022 won't count as an accrued year. So he has to show up to training camp or else the 49ers are in another year of rookie team control. Deebo certainly doesn't want that. He could potentially hold in, which means show up to training camp so the fines don't start running in like TJ Watt did last year, and get that accrued year going, but not participate in on-field activities. There are options here for both sides. Some of them are more nuclear than others. But at the end of the day, the 49ers have stronger leverage than Deebo Samuel, yet both sides have some leverage. Questions. Isn't it hard to say anything about how well Trey will do until we actually see him play consistently during a regular season? I think that's what Go for Broke is trying to ask. Yes, and maybe you're just arguing with somebody else. I don't know. I don't look at this comment section nearly enough. But, I have said a lot about Trey Lance. There's been a 10-part series, me breaking down every single snap from the All-22 film of Trey Lance. It's on this YouTube channel. So if you're watching for the first time, subscribe. It's on the playlist. You can go watch what we think of Trey Lance and how he might progress. I think the learning curve was extremely steep for him last year. And I think he made a lot of progress with the 49ers last year. And I think that they're happy with where he's at right now, but they also know that, this offseason is going to be really, really important. And that's why they'd like to have Deebo Samuel be part of it. Here's a question about, this is a good one. Jeff Darlington stated that he wants to keep the reasons why he's requesting a trade private for now. So it couldn't be about the money, right? It has to be personal. Well, I just said this on the Athletics show. Personal reasons and money reasons aren't often neatly divided into 2 buckets. They can overlap. For a certain amount of personal strain, there's enough money that can solve those problems, right? Sometimes some of these personal issues get a lot more serious when the monetary side of the equation is not being satisfied. So I don't think it's as simple as personal issues, money issues, usage issues. It's like that commenter, the questioner, I guess I should say, on the Athletic show, Anthony O, said, it's a little bit of everything. It's a perfect storm. And then you have Tory Dandy representing all these guys. And the perfect storm meant that shit has hit the fan right now. Joey Nickles, I'd completely cut off negotiations with Deebo and then make him play out his rookie contract. Then I'd tag and trade him to the Texans or the Lions. All right, so that's a hardball nuclear option from the 49ers perspective. Now, what would Deebo do in return? Would he hold in a training camp to make sure he accrues the 2022 season so he could be an unrestricted free agent in 2023? And then would he actually play for you in 2022? Would he suit up and would he play hard for the 49ers? I mean, we're making some assumptions here. I don't know. One thing that we can say is that the 49ers have deeper pockets, obviously, in this kind of standoff than Deebo Samuel. He's still on the rookie deal, which isn't all that lucrative, but yes, he's brought in a few million with it, including the signing bonus. So is Deebo Samuel able to sit there, play the game of chicken, win the stare down with the 49ers, not play throughout all of this season and enter unrestricted free agency Is he willing? Does he have the guts to do that? Does he have the financial wherewithal, the ability to do that and not make any money this year? Remember that he's passing up the chance at a very big signing bonus. It would take a lot of discipline to not have that cashed into his bank account for over 1 year. So that's why the 49ers have some leverage here. That's why they can go nuclear, because I think it remains doubtful that Deebo Samuel would want to play that game of chicken for that amount of time. If you don't get paid, if you don't play, you don't get paid, correct? Is it just fines? Yeah, if you don't show up to work, you're not earning your base salary. The contracts, the teams are protected, and the contract is the contract in this situation. His career will be over if he goes to the Jets, says somebody with a Jets car, Jim Page, in his avatar there. The Jets, though, are the one team that probably makes most sense from a trade perspective, because Robert Saleh on that staff loved Deebo Samuel. They own number 4, number 10. They might be able to blow the 49ers socks away with a trade offer. And Deebo Samuel probably would be enthusiastic to go somewhere where there's some familiarity. And obviously, they would have to be willing to pay him. And in that scenario, the Jets, who have salary cap space, would be able to pay him. So funny comment. I don't know what will happen to the Jets this next year. They weren't good this past year in Saleh's first season, but again, it was Saleh's first season. And now they have started to stock up some talent. If Deebo Samuel becomes part of that fold, who knows where they go? Seems like there may still be quarterback issues, though, for the New York Jets. Does Deebo's ability really meld well with Trey's skill set? He isn't the best ball catcher in the air. No, he isn't. And let's take a look at this. Just how valuable is Deebo Samuel to the 49ers? This is what I wrote just a few days ago, and it's very relevant now. We can take a look at the chart here. This is yards per route run, receiver efficiency for the 2021 season. Blue is good, red is bad. Look up and down the list. Number 2 in the whole NFL in terms of yards per route run is Deebo Samuel. We can't look at this through your raw receiving yardage, because Samuel played a lot of running back, so he got hurt in that column. But if we look at this in a smarter way, yards per route run, which only considers the routes that Deebo Samuel actually ran, he ranked second this year to only Cooper Kupp. But in accordance with your question, which talks about Deebo Samuel not being the best ball catcher, look at the drop rate. Dark red, 12.1%. No player in the NFL dropped more passes than Deebo Samuel did this past season. The drop rate of 12.1% led the NFL. Is the worst in the league. Yet somehow Deebo Samuel was still the second most efficient receiver in football. It's a quandary. It's a miracle. It's almost a mathematical impossibility. But the way that Deebo Samuel made it work is because of the column, the third one on the right here. Third column over, second row down. 10.8 yards after the catch per reception. That is the best recorded figure of all time. 10.8 yards after the catch per reception. Deebo Samuel destroys people after the catch. Dare I say it, he plays wide receiver almost like a running back in the open field. And I don't mean that in disparaging fashion. I mean that complementarily to Deebo Samuel. You have a lot of nifty receivers these days, a lot of fast receivers these days, and then you have guys who just knock other dudes' mouth guards out. And that's Deebo Samuel. And it sets a tone for the 49ers. And the fact that he was so good after the catch made him efficient despite the fact that he didn't catch the ball all too well. 12 drops speaks for itself. So will he meld with Trey's skill set? Well, that depends what exactly Trey's skill set is going to be. Trey can throw the ball downfield, yes, but it's the short game through which Jimmy Garoppolo really saw cohesion with through which Deebo Samuel really saw cohesion with Jimmy Garoppolo this past year. Through a precise short game, Deebo Samuel had a chance to deliver that record-setting average of yards after the catch. And the short game is going to be critical in Kyle Shanahan's system, and the run game is going to be always critical in Kyle Shanahan's system, regardless of who the quarterback is. So, yes, to answer your question, Deebo better meld well with Trey, and Trey better meld well with Deebo, because if the two do meld well, that means that Trey is delivering in the short game, and that's allowing Deebo Samuel the ability to run after the catch. Interestingly, I don't think that Deebo Samuel is the best man-beating wide receiver on the 49ers roster. I think that distinction definitely belongs to Brandon Ayuk. But Deebo Samuel reaches elite receiving efficiency through a different path. And the path that he chooses is through defenders' souls. And I think any quarterback can work with that, right? If Trey Lance gets that release sped up, if he gets into a position where he is a master of that short game and distributing the football to Deebo Samuel on the perimeter, well, then Deebo Samuel can continue delivering some of his prolific yards after the catch numbers. It's all a matter of the quarterback setting the receiver up for success. And I do think that Deebo Samuel's game showed that he can meld with anybody this past year. Great in the short game. It will be a prerequisite for Trey Lance to be good in the short game if he wants to be the 49ers' long-term answer at quarterback. And hey, Deebo Samuel was no slouch in the deep game either. He made catches downfield. Jimmy Garoppolo threw that one to him in Detroit. Trey Lance threw that bomb to Deebo Samuel week 17 against the Houston Texans. If the 49ers lose Deebo and get some draft picks back, do the 49ers prioritize O-line first or a top wide receiver for Trey in the draft? That's a great question. I think the 49ers, I don't know who they prioritize first because I don't know what pick they would get back. So we're doing a lot of speculation at this point. But boy, do the 49ers need to put more investment into the offensive line. It's a problem, and I haven't even talked about Alex Mack yet today. And I have an article about Alex Mack and a potential retirement coming and what the 49ers should do if Alex Mack does indeed retire this next year. It's not certain. There's nothing really known yet, but it's all stuff the 49ers have to think about. And even if Alex Mack is back, well, they better think of contingency plans at center. And that probably means drafting a center of the future, unless you want to roll with Daniel Brunskill. So I always believe in fortifying that offensive line with good picks up front. But if Deebo does leave, boy, he was so important to this offense last year. You do need to think about drafting his replacement. The thing is, you don't have a stud that's like Deebo. I mean, throughout all of the NFL Combine, everybody was talking about, I want to be the next Deebo, all this and all that. Executives are talking about finding the next Deebo. Well, there's a reason why we're having contractual discussions this unique right now for the first time. It's because not everybody's the first Deebo. There's only one Deebo. There's only one player in NFL history who's racked up 1,500 receiving yards and 500 rushing yards in a single season, and that's Deebo Samuel. So it's going to be really hard to replace Deebo Samuel with a player who definitely doesn't have his skill set, because that's the case. He's a unicorn. And that's why the 49ers, in their positionless skill offense, right? We got Kyle Juszczyk playing all over the field. You have George Kittle, who earned big money because he plays all over the field. Kyle Shanahan likes his matchup advantages. And having a guy that is able to move around the formation like Deebo Samuel, like Juszczyk, like George Kittle, gives Kyle Shanahan the matchup advantages he wants. And it's going to be hard to replace that through the draft, which is why the price for Deebo Samuel would have to be astronomical for the 49ers to consider him. Okay, let's check it out. Where are you guys at? More questions, and then I have to go take a little bit of a break. Do you think him seeing Ayuk and Trey train together can be playing a role in this? Possibly Ayuk taking wide receiver 1 from him? That I don't buy, because Deebo Samuel can easily train with Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk too. I don't think it's as much about wide receiver 1 and 2 with the 49ers. Again, this has been for a while an unconventional offense in that they try to be interchangeable with the pieces around the perimeter and elsewhere. And I honestly believe that Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, it seemed they had a good relationship this past year. When one guy was a little bit more covered, the other guy got more opportunities. And that was a healthy offense. And the 49ers were obviously efficient offensively. It was a top 5 efficiency pass offense this past season. So this is something that I wouldn't consider a factor. But I guess when we have so much unknown, we can never rule anything out. Waiting for more. Here's something from Owl Jason. This is all Kyle's doing. I hope you all realize the true details regarding this effed up situation. There are so many underlying issues regarding this whole situation, and it's all Kyle's fault. Well, I mean, you yourself said it. Owl Jolson, you yourself said it. You said there's so many underlying issues regarding this whole situation. So if there's so many underlying issues, how can it all be one person's fault? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think Kyle's the one negotiating the contracts right now. If anything, Kyle Shanahan's going to be one of the major players that can get the 49ers out of this personal mess. Because, yes, it has gotten personal at some level. But guess who was sitting in Kyle Shanahan's office for hours this season, chatting it up with the coach? Guess who has that great relationship with Kyle Shanahan? It's Deebo Samuel. So if there's a personal fracture, a personal rift, it's the personal relationship between Deebo Samuel and Kyle Shanahan that might be able to fix it. Just food for thought in that situation. Reporters' jobs is to make stories. Only people know the truth about the situation is the 49ers, Tory Dandy, and Deebo Samuel. Deebo just tweeted this 5 minutes ago. Oh, he did? All right, thanks for putting out there. Let me get this. Let me get Deebo Samuel's Twitter open, and we'll take a look. Take a look at it. Hey, I mean, I think in this situation, I mean, if Deebo Samuel wants us to know the truth, then he can go ahead and talk about it. He could pop open an Instagram live, and we'll know. I'm going to go to his page, and we'll look at what Deebo Samuel said. 19 problems. Maybe we can make that 20 problems, given the increasing issues of today. Reporters' jobs are to make stories. Only people are to make stories. I'm guessing that's the end of the sentence. And then only people know the truth about the situation are the 49ers, his agent, Tory Dandy, and Deebo Samuel. Deebo referring to himself in the third person. Wonderful. Yes, I mean, that's true. And I'm sure that, I mean, I've been saying it all day. I've been saying that there is at least one piece to the puzzle, most likely more, that we just don't know. There's a mystery piece to the puzzle that we don't know. Because why is Deebo Samuel not sitting down and talking to the 49ers? There must be something on a personal level. Maybe the first offer offended him. Maybe there are people in his ear. Again, I don't know, but there's something we don't know because there's a disconnect here. And I talked about the disconnect earlier in the show. The mysterious Deebo Samuel contradictions. Are they agent-driven? Deebo just mentioned Tory Dandy in his Twitter post. Well, we talk about Tory Dandy, and we talk about the fact that Deebo has wide back T-shirts for sale, even though that reporters and the reports coming out of this are saying that he's complaining about his usage. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Deebo last week signaled that it's about 25 million APY when he endorsed his friend's tweet, Ricardo Young's tweet. But then the reports today indicated that it's not about the money. So which is it? I mean, it seems that these two things don't go hand in hand. It's time to solve the great disconnect. That's what I talked about a little bit earlier today. And Deebo Samuel just went to Twitter. It didn't really help us solve the great disconnect, but did tell us what we didn't know. Yes, there's a lot of mystery here because there's a disconnect and we don't know what the truth is. We don't know what got us to this point of, I don't think this is at a rational point right now. I think if the 49ers want to pay Deebo Samuel, which they do, and if Deebo Samuel wants a lot of money, which he does, I think that the rational thing to do would be to sit down, talk it out, and award him another big contract. The 49ers have not been shy about rewarding players with huge deals. In fact, they've given out more positional record deals than any other team in the NFL ever since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have taken over. Jimmy Garoppolo got record money back in 2018. Kyle Juszczyk has gotten record money for the fullback position twice. Trent Williams has set the bar at left tackle thanks to the 49ers. George Kittle has set the bar at tight end, and that was a record-shattering deal, a ceiling burster for the 49ers, while Fred Warner was at the top of the linebacker market thanks to the 49ers. So 49ers aren't shy about paying. It seems that Deebo Samuel, for whatever reason, and this is not a knock on Deebo because I don't know why, but I want to know why, it seems that Deebo Samuel is shy about engaging with the 49ers right now. And there's an impasse. And it might be because the 49ers lowballed him out of the gate. I don't know. It might be because somebody's told him that the 49ers need to treat him with more respect. It might be a negotiating ploy from Tory Dandy because he wants the 49ers to offer a huge lump sum of money in one fell swoop so that he can make his other clients, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown, much richer simultaneously because all three of these deals might work together. Again, it's likely a perfect storm. And that likely solves the great disconnect, but we can't firmly solve it until we know the perfect details of the perfect storm. All we know right now is that Deebo Samuel has requested a trade from the 49ers, and I'll answer a few more questions. What do you guys want to know? Oh, wow. We got a tip. Appreciate that. They can't pay a 27-year-old wide receiver with injury history a max contract over several years. Ayuk can fill that role. They can bring in another second wide receiver. Well, here's the thing. And this is, I think that part of this is thanks for the tip, by the way. Anybody gives me a tip, I'll try to get your question up there. Sounds like a fair deal. But with Deebo Samuel, is he really that injury prone? Think about this. Deebo Samuel played 18 games in 2019. 18 out of 20 games in 2019. The 2020 season is when he broke his foot in the offseason. And then he played only 7 of 16 games. And then he played in 19 of 20 games for the 49ers in this past 2021 season. So Deebo Samuel has missed almost all of the time that he's missed in one season in 2020. I have the exact numbers right here. I want to find them just so I can put them up on the screen for you right here as far as the injury situation goes. In the 2 seasons that Deebo Samuel wasn't coming off of his broken foot, he's played in 37 of 39 games. So 9 of the 11 total games that Samuel has missed over his NFL career have all come in one season in 2020. So to me, that statistic suggests that he was hurt one year, but not that he's injury prone. He broke his foot, and then that led to conditioning issues, the hamstring issue down the road because he wasn't able to stay in the best shape while his foot was broken. But as far as being injury prone, is there data of that? I don't think so. There's not data of that from 2019. There's not data of that from 2021. And I think this is something Tori Gandy is definitely bringing out right now. I think they waited this long. Another tip, by the way, same guy. Really appreciate you. I think they waited this long to ensure his contract was a max contract that's showing respect to Deebo Samuel and making whoever takes him pay the piper. So, there are no technical max contracts in the NFL, but I think what you're saying is that the 49ers waited this long to ensure that somebody would trade. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to read your tweet wrong there or read your comment wrong, but I think you're saying that out of respect to Deebo Samuel, they wanted somebody to pick up a massive tab for him. I'm not so sure about that. I think the 49ers are willing to pick up a massive tab, but I also think that they're going to do their standard due diligence and negotiations, which means don't offer the house in April. They reached terms with Fred Warner and George Kittle in July, and they were in similar situations as Deebo Samuel is now, and it's only April. So it's important to remember that timetable. It's reasonable for him to try and leverage his play to get a big deal to take care of himself, but can't blame the Niners for not cashing him out for one good season and not wanting to overpay. Again, there's been more than one. I don't want to sound like I'm Deebo Samuel's agent here, but I like to correct, I think, some inaccuracies. Deebo Samuel's had more than one good NFL season. Deebo Samuel was really good as a rookie in 2019, and then he was historically good in 2021. So out of 3 years in the NFL, he's had 2 really good seasons. And the third season was one that was following a broken foot in the offseason. So it's not as simple as, Deebo Samuel's a one-hit wonder, 49ers cash out, move on. It definitely isn't. It's more of a situation where he's had 2 good seasons. He's been historically good. And now, for some reason, there might be a personal issue involved. Something might have gotten personal, shifted from the finances to the ego, and Deebo Samuel won't negotiate with the 49ers, so he's requested a trade. I think there's between those 2 truths. The Chad says, Deebo's style won't age well. Even his biggest fans should know that. It's a valid concern, but maybe he's a special player. And when you talk about aging well, do you think it will age poorly 5 years from now, or do you think it will start aging poorly now? because you're talking about giving a 3 to 5 year deal right now if you're the 49ers. And in that case, you don't care if it ages poorly 6 years from now, right? So maybe he's not a guy that's going to go into his 30s, but he's definitely a guy that still has some gas left for the second contract, right? And if that's the case, you're paying for what you're going to get over the course of the next contract. Joey Nickles wants to send Deebo to the Texans, aka NFL purgatory. Well, we'll see what happens there. The Texans might have some draft capital to give up, so their name's going to be mentioned in any trade rumors here. All right, guys, I am probably going to wrap this up here in a second. It's been fun talking about Deebo. We'll probably talk a little bit more. Another cataclysmic day, just another day at the office covering the 49ers, right? It gets wild in these parts, but hey, what can we do? Can't complain. It's good for traffic. Good for subscribers, right? Subscribe to the channel. If you like anything that you saw, subscribe to the Athletic article is up there on the screen. It's been good stuff today, even though I know a lot of people are royally annoyed. I've gotten so many texts from 49ers fan friends and people that I know. Frustrated with Deebo Samuel, frustrated with the 49ers. Hey, it happens. Sometimes the rational road is not the one that's followed. We're all human. There are complications to things. We don't know all the complications here. It's okay that we don't know all the complications here. We'll find out with due time. For now, we just sit back and analyze this as it develops in real time. Thank you all for your time. Hit that subscribe button right now. I still see that there's like 259 of you on right now. So hover that mouse over, click the subscribe button, and we'll all be friends. Everybody take care. It's been fun. I'll be on again soon, maybe even tonight. So keep those notifications on as well. Bye now.